I know that Brad is going to be this hands-off, like, try and take a approach of like, look, let the coach do the coaching. I'm the president of basketball operations. My job is to improve the team any way I can see fit. Ime's the coach on the floor doing all this stuff. I'm up here, keep things separate. I think that's a good thing to have. You don't want a GM or a Pobo breathing down your neck all the time about stuff. Like, you don't want an owner interacting. Like, I always have this saying: the less you know about an owner, the better. That means the owner is just your hands off. I'm letting the everybody figure their stuff out. I hired people for a reason. I don't need to do all this stuff. But at some point, like, Chris, does Brad need to get involved here and say, like, hey, like, look, let's sit down. Like, because look, Ime's a first-time head coach. Okay, again, I beat the drum so loudly for Ime in the offseason that I'm obviously not giving up on Ime at this particular point. Okay, I know people are up on the bandwagon. People wanted to fire Brad last year, and I thought that was ridiculous. I think people that are trying to call for Ime's job right now are also ridiculous. Okay, but at some point, Brad's got to be like, okay, look, I understand there are first-year head coaching issues. Let's talk about what you're going through, what I'm seeing, and maybe we can that's what Brad's got to step in at some point, Chris, to at least just give Ime a helping hand here. Again, Brad, the beauty of the fact that Brad got elevated is the fact that Brad knows his team better than anybody else, and he's been a head coach. So, like, it's kind of the perfect guy to kind of have Ime come into his office and say, hey, like, look, I know it's frustrating. Here are some things that I think we could try. Like, does that conversation happen? But I think it needs to happen. Does it actually happen? I don't know, Chris. I think Brad's got to step in a little bit here.
If I know Brad and being around him over the last couple of years and kind of getting a sense of his tendencies, I would be pretty surprised if that happened, unless Ime Udoka comes to him proactively and says, hey, you got to help me out here. Which,
but if you're Brad, like, don't you have to be proactive too? Like, this is your team too.
I think you have to be proactive in what you're doing with the roster and what you're doing with the players around Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, because it's very obvious that this roster is not maximizing those two guys. But I just don't see Brad as the kind of GM to go forth and kind of insert himself back toward the coaching realm. Again, if Ime Udoka were to approach him, I'm sure Brad would be super willing to lend a hand and like kind of help him through this first year. And who knows, again, with COVID and stuff, we're not inside the locker room like we once were. We're not around the team as much as we once were, but I just have a hard time seeing Brad, stepping on his toes. I think he's going to let Ime kind of work through this himself. And I have a feeling Ime is going to want to work through it himself. Again, it's not working to this point. We're about halfway through the year. I am fine with giving a first-year head coach a long leash because you've seen it time and time again. Sometimes it takes a while, but the lack of in-game adjustments is super concerning. I just don't see Brad stepping in like that from a coaching realm. On the trade front, Brad's got to make some moves, some tweaks come the trade deadline. Like, you're not going to see a major overhaul of a roster midseason unless your GM is LeBron, when he can just move his chess pieces around and completely retool a roster. That kind of thing isn't going to happen midseason. So I think the Brad conversation for the next month or so is, what are the tweaks that he is going to make around Jaylen and around Jason? Because that's got to be the next step. Again, you're not at a point where you trade Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, and you're not at that point this offseason, but you are at a point where you need to maximize the roster around those guys because the clock is ticking and you need to maximize their skill sets. They're two incredible talents. So I think that is the conversation with Brad more so than him inserting himself into the coaching thing. But I totally get what you're saying. Like, he's a great guy to have up there because he's been through it.
Perfect guy.